Most people have very small and very limited definition of worship. उन्हें लगता है कि it's a religious act, something that you do on a specific day in a sacred place and following certain religious rituals. And because that definition feels normal, nobody ever stopped to question it. But truth ये है, you don't decide to worship, you are already doing it. Every moment your attention is devoted somewhere. The issue is that most of you aren't worshipping God, you are worshipping your problems. You are bowing down to your anxieties and you have given this unconscious worship a very harmful name. You call it worrying. Now, I'm not interested talking about worry from a psychological perspective. I want to look at it mechanically. I want to show you the spiritual science behind how your attention actually operates, because once you see the mechanism behind it and once you realize you have been feeding your own problems, you won't be able to relate to the worry the same way again. Now, जैसा कि मैंने कहा कि ज़्यादातर लोग सोचते हैं कि worship is an activity, something you perform through prayers, rituals or using specific words. But that's just surface level understanding. Mechanically speaking, worship is much simpler, because worship is just the name for what your attention keeps returning to. It's what your mind refuses to leave alone. It's whatever carries the most emotional weight for you again and again. That's it. So, in simple language, worship is just the sustained attention combined with emotions and repeated over time. Now, there is no morality, there is no judgment. It's a neutral mechanism. और ये मेरी opinion नहीं है. This is how scripture defines worship. In Bhagavad Gita chapter 12 verse 8, when Krishna defines real devotion, he doesn't give a list of rituals. He simply gives very specific instruction. And the verse says, Mayyev man adhatsva may buddhim niveshya niveshishyasi mayyev ata urdhuv na shanshya. Which means, fix your mind on me alone, let your intellect dwell in me, then you will live in me. Now, notice the wordings here. Fix your mind. It doesn't mean a passing thought, it means attention that is locked, not briefly, not occasionally, but fixed. Then he adds a precision layer on top of that. He says, let your intellect dwell. The word used here is buddhi. And in this context, buddhi isn't just logic, it's your emotional conviction. It's the gravitational pull of what you feel is important. Your mind, it doesn't stay with neutral things. It stays where there is emotional weight. And then the word dwell. That is the key. Because to dwell is to remain, to inhabit, to come back until you don't leave. So in one verse, worship is stripped of its mystery. It is attention that stays, powered by emotional conviction, repeated until it becomes a state. Now look at the result. Krishna doesn't say you reach God by moving through space. He says you will live in me. Now this is about the alignment, not travel. Your consciousness become an exact replica of what you repeatedly rest upon. This means you don't just worship God, you literally dictate how reality shows up for you. Functionally, whatever has authority over your attention is your God. Whatever you dwell in become the state through which God, the divine intelligence, operates through you. That's why in Bhagavad Gita chapter 12 verse 25, Krishna says you attain what you worship. Why? Because your consciousness is the force to take the shape of what it keeps returning to. Worship isn't a performance, it's a residence. And once you see this, the realization hits. Fear, worry and anxiety, they are not just the feelings, they are the false god. You didn't choose them deliberately, but you accepted them the moment they occupied your inner state. And your devotion is now belongs to them. And once you understand worship this way, it stops being religious and it just becomes mechanical. You don't have to guess what you worship. Just look at where your attention is pointing toward. Notice what you are energizing with your emotions and notice what you are mentally rehearsing. And this clarifies something very interesting. Oftentimes we talk about merging with the God consciousness. But the truth is, God consciousness isn't dramatic or loud, because if you look at in Gita, it is called the state of sattva, the state of stillness, bliss, peace. When your consciousness is aligned with the truth, when your consciousness is aligned with the God, the noise of worry stops because there is no more division in attention. Closeness to the God is often described as stillness, not because God likes silence, but because stillness is the sign that your attention is no longer being hijacked by chaos. And if you look at the Bible, something similar to this has been stated. It says, be still and know I am the God. So stillness isn't a technique or practice, it's a prerequisite for you to know the God. It's what remains when the orientation is correct. When fear drops, the alignment is revealed. Truth doesn't disturb you, it settles you. And that steady, undivided state is the only place where God consciousness can actually function. Now, if the worship is the state that you live in, then that state is what reality responds to. Now, most people believe reality organizes itself around their efforts, their intention, or how badly they want something. But it doesn't. Reality organizes itself around your state. State comes first, the outcome follows. Reality can only work with the condition that you present to. It cannot respond to the future wish if your present state contradicts that wish. Vedanta summarizes this as a mechanical law. Yatha drishti tatha srishti. As is your perception, so is the creation. As the way you see, so the world you experience. Not because the world is an hallucination, but because experience always follows the perception. Consciousness selects, and whatever it selects repeatedly become the experience around which your life organizes. Reality doesn't correct your state, it simply extends it. Faithfully, automatically, without exception. Reality doesn't argue, it simply reflects. Think of it like standing in front of a mirror with a closed fist. The mirror cannot show you a one hand. It isn't being stubborn or difficult, it's just being consistent. This is what really orientation means. It's the direction your mind is facing, it's the direction your emotions are pointing toward. If your attention is fixed on the problem, you are facing a wall. The solution isn't gone, it's just behind you, outside of your current field of view. And this leads to the realization that changes how you view worry. Reality cannot resolve a problem while you are living in a state that assumes the problem exists. Same orientation, same outcome. Worry doesn't react to the problem, it keeps them alive, because worry is just the fear stretched across the time. And when fear becomes your dominant state, it creates duality. And the Upanishad states it directly. Ditiyad vai bhayam bhavati. Fear arises from the perception of duality. Now, duality is just a fancy way of saying polarity or separation. Everything in this reality has their polar opposite. Day and night, light and dark, north and south, positive and negative. Now what fear does is that it splits your perception into opposing sides. But the problem and the solution, they are not the two different things, they are the same reality approach from two different orientations. Fear collapses your attention onto the problem side of the scale. The solution disappears from your view, not because it stopped existing, but because your perception has narrowed. Like a coin. If you stare at one side of the coin long enough, you stop seeing the other. But the other side is still there. This is why worrying feels intelligent and clarity feels naive. You think you are being realistic, but you are actually just being blind. Even quantum physics points to this. Outcome doesn't happen because of force, they happen because of the orientation. Look at the phenomenon called quantum entanglement. Two particles are linked. When one is observed, the other responds instantly, regardless of the distance between them. The result appears because the system was already aligned. Now, this is the bridge between ancient wisdom, which says fear comes from the idea that you and solution are separate, and quantum physics shows your inner state and your outer life, they are the one. The outcome isn't something that you reach through hard work, it's something that is revealed when your inner state is aligned with it. Now, here's the part most people miss. A problem cannot dissolve from the state that assumes the problem exists. Think about what happens when a problem is actually solved. Your mind stops searching, your body relaxes, there is no urgency, no fear, no mental rehearsal. That calm, still and settled state is not something that you force, it's the state that naturally exists when the problem is no longer active. Now, reality cannot move you into that state. It can only reflect the state that you're already living in. If you remain worried, tense and alert, reality receives a clear signal that the problem is still there. But when you shift into the state that would exist if the problem were already resolved, a state like peace, relaxation, stillness, reality receives a new signal. And reality doesn't argue with the signals, it simply reorganizes around them. So if your state assumes lack, reality maintains lack. If your state assumes instability, reality maintains instability. It's not a punishment, it is consistency. Now look at the worry from this lens. Worry isn't just a thought that passes through. It's a thought that pulls you back again and again. You just don't think it, you inhibit it. You sit inside it. This means worrying isn't a random event, it is something that you teach your mind through repetition. Repetition is not coincidence, it's inevitability. The more often your attention goes there, the lower the resistance becomes for it to go back. And each time it returns, the emotions makes it stick. Mechanically, worry fit the definition of worship perfectly. Not because of your intent, but because of how it actually works. Your attention stays there, the feeling stays there. This happens until it becomes your state. Reality doesn't respond to what you want, it responds to where your attention actually lives. The mind will try to argue. It says, I'm not worshipping my problem, I'm just being careful. But being careful is a brief observation. It shows up, look at what's needed, and moves on. Worry doesn't move, it stays, and it keeps replaying the same situation even when nothing new is happening. Wisdom doesn't feel like being trapped in fear. If fear is present, it doesn't mean you are preparing, it means your orientation is still locked on the problem. Worry is convincing because it wears the mask of responsibility, and especially in our culture, we have confused worry with care. We think if we don't worry, it means we don't care, but fear is just pretending to be intelligence. It tells you that tension is awareness. Mechanically, the opposite is true. Control doesn't come from effort, it comes from where you are standing. Worry keeps your attention fixed on the problem, and because attention does not stay neutral, the inner state becomes one of instability. That state is just not a feeling, it is the orientation. And reality mirrors orientation, as within, so without. When the inner state remains unresolved, the outer situation cannot be resolved either. Safety cannot appear while the inner state assumes there's a threat. A solution cannot appear while the inner state stays stuck in the problem, and reality cannot deliver the opposite of the condition you are holding internally. And what you live inside internally becomes the pattern that reality continues to reflect, not once, repeatedly, automatically. Think of it like planting. Reality is like a soil, and soil is perfectly honest and perfectly indifferent. It doesn't care what you plant, it doesn't judge the seed, it doesn't ask you if you meant to plant a weed. And truly, you aren't being punished for worrying, reality is just being consistent. It gives life to whatever you water. Now, in this example, worry is the seed and attention is the water. You don't need to fight the weed of your problems, you just have to stop watering them with your attention. When you withdraw the emotions, they lose their gravity. Soil doesn't respond to your wishes or your prayers, it responds to the nourishment. Whatever receives sustained attention continues to grow, not because it's deserved, but because it's being fed. This is why people feel stuck. It's not because reality is against them, it's because their inner state hasn't moved. The same worry, the same orientation, and reality reflects that faithfully. So, state comes first, outcome follows. You don't become what you hope for, you become what you live from. When the orientation changes, the pattern outside is forced to change, not by force but by the law. There is an interesting story in the Bible that points to this through the story of Job. Job was not a sinner, he was described as a righteous man devoted to the God, disciplined, sincere in his faith. By every religious standards, he was doing everything right. He prayed, he lived ethically, and he trusted God, and yet his life fell apart. He lost his wealth, he lost his family, his health collapsed. Everything that people assume devotion should protect them from happened to him anyways. And he said, "The thing I greatly feared has come upon me." Now, that isn't confession of a sin, it's a statement of spiritual science. Even the devotion to the God does not cancel the law. Job was worshipping God, but fear was living alongside that worship. Fear was his secret orientation, and whatever lives in your consciousness participates in your reality. Fear wasn't something that suddenly attacked Job. It was the state he lived in quietly, and life simply responded to the signal that he was broadcasting. Nothing here is personal. Reality is not evaluating you, it is not rewarding your goodness or punishing your mistakes. It's simply responding to your orientation. Worrying is not a bad habit, it is a state, and every state has consequences. As long as your consciousness remains pointed in the same direction, reality has no alternative but to show you the same result. If you keep facing the same direction, you will keep seeing the same things. When your orientation changes, force is no longer required. Reality reorganizes on its own, not because it was convinced by your prayer, but because it has no reason to stay the same. This is the realization that worry cannot survive, not because it's wrong, but because it no longer makes sense. When your consciousness is no longer kneeling to the problem loses its gravity. That isn't a belief, that's how reality really works. So the final question is no longer how do I stop worrying, but the question become, and let me write it down, where is my attention living right now?